How's it going, everybody? In this video, we're going to go ahead and dive into setting up OSPF on vEdge 1 and vEdge 2 and get that all squared away. And then we'll go through and verify the connectivity and all that type of stuff. Once we're all done, vEdge 1 and vEdge 2 should both be receiving a default route via OSPF from switch 16 and should also see the connected link between router 5 and switch 16 as well as the ASA. So all those routes should be propagated to both vEdges once we're all squared away and configured. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the command line. I'm going to go ahead and get out of the way. We're going to look at vEdge 1 and do this via the CLI. So I'm going to log in as admin and admin. I'm going to go to global config and I'm going to type in VPN1. And then underneath here you have only a handful of things you can use. We're going to type in router, enter key, and then in this case here OSPF, enter key. You don't specify a process with OSPF. You simply just create the, you create OSPF and then you go from there. So we're going to type in the area. And the area we're going to give is area 0 because that's what all the other devices are running. Underneath here, we have to call an interface from VPN1. So interface GE0/2. And then underneath here, we can specify a number of variables if we want to define authentication. So if we want to make switch 16 authenticate to us, we can do that. If we want to affect the cost outbound to any of the devices that we have, so if cost is locally significant, so if you want to affect how the vEdge will forward traffic out, you can affect this. You can affect the hello and dead intervals if you'd like to do so. If you want to change the network type to not specify not originate a specific type of LSA, specifically the type 2 LSA, the DR LSA, you could change the network type to be something like point-to-point. We'll look at passive interfaces, priority, and retransmit interval. These passive interface simply means that you will not send or receive hello messages out that interface. Priority is if you wanted to change who the DR is on a particular link, and retransmit interval is time between retransmitting lost link state advertisements. We're not going to mess with that either. We're going to mess with a couple of these variables as we move forward. So we're going to take a look at getting OSPF up and running on vEdge 1 and vEdge 2 and some of the different variables that go into that. We'll play around with the network type and we'll take a look at setting up authentication. So we'll do some of the more common things that you're probably going to be dealing with in production versus what you would deal with inside of a lab environment. If you want to play with all these variables, you are 100% welcome to do that. We're not going to be doing that in this video, or in this, at least in this series. So for right now, I've got the configuration where I want it to be. If we do a show config, we can see that I've gone under VPN1. I've enabled OSPF routing. The timer values are there by default. We don't have to do anything with that. And we've underneath area 0, we've enabled gig 0/2. So we're in good shape. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to commit that. And what's going to end up happening is after a moment or so, switch 16 should form an OSPF adjacency with me over that link. And might take it a couple of seconds for it to trigger, assuming that I've done everything right. Show run, let's do a show IP OSPF interface brief. Yeah, it should form an OSPF adjacency here momentarily. Might take it a couple seconds for it to trigger. Let me see if do show run VPN1 and OSPF has been enabled for that particular interface. Switch 1, show run section OSPF. Take a look at that config real quick and see why it's not triggering for gig 0/0. Oh, it's because I'm doing authentication. That's right, I forgot. So show run interface G0/0. That would be why. Let me go ahead and just pull this command out real quick. So interface G0/0. We'll take a look at that in an upcoming video. But that would be why. I forgot about that. Like, why is it taking so long? It should have come up a lot sooner than that. So as soon as the hello goes out, there's no authentication required. There we go. So there we have it. So that's the vEdge1, and if I go back to vEdge1 and I do a show OSPF neighbors for VPN1, I should see a neighbor coming in. If I do a show IP route via VPN1, I should see a few routes coming in, and you can see that I'm learning through VPN1 through OSPF. I'm learning 10.5.16. I'm also learning 10.1.60, and if you notice, I'm also learning a default route through there. So I'm in good shape there. Let's check like something like vEdge3. Let's look at this guy. Show IP route VPN1. And if you look here, we are learning routes, right? But one thing that we're not learning is we're not learning that default route. You'll notice that because we haven't advertised it. We'll take a look at that in an upcoming video where once we get the routing up and playing and we get done with BGP, then we'll focus on setting up NAT, and we'll talk about how you can use NAT redundancy in order to set up failover. So we're in good shape there. Let's go ahead and do this on vManage now. Let's take a look at how that process would work. Let me go ahead and log into vManage. And we're going to go through the process of setting that up on at least the, and again, I get that darn security check thing. I'm not sure if that's a bug or if that's just me not doing it right. Anyway, whatever the case might be, we're going to go to configuration and templates, and then we need to create a feature template. So we're going to go ahead and inside of the feature template, we're going to add a feature template for vEdge Cloud, and this is going to be an OSPF template. So we're going to come underneath here, vEdge underscore, we'll say dual site VPN1 OSPF template. Because then if you want to create other ones, we can do that just by changing the name around a little bit. Underneath here, for the router ID, we're not going to mess with that, which will be automatically generated. We're not going to do any redistribution. We will have to do redistribution if we want to take routes that are learned via OMP on the vEdges, and we want to take those routes from OMP and redistribute them into OSPF. We're going to have to redistribute OMP. Because automatically it doesn't do that, so we'll have to do that. So we're going to go ahead and advertise, set up a new redistribution. We're going to choose the protocol, which is going to be OMP, and we're going to just click on add. Well, I'll mark this as optional and click on add. So we're good to go there. And if we come down a little bit further, we can play around with our max metric router LSA, which essentially is just setting a really high cost value on a local LSA, on a local route. You're basically on all interfaces, you're basically going to tell all the routers that are physically connected to you that your LSA values are super, super high, your cost values. So when they look at the routing table, they're going like, oh wow, in order to get to that particular, to go that direction to this router, in order to get to that destination is really, really high. Use some other path in your OSPF domain in order to get there. That's what max metric router LSA does. So in the area, we're going to have to create a new area. We're going to say area 0, and we're going to add an interface. So add interface, and we're going to choose GE0/2, like that. And if I wanted to go do anything, this is where I would do it. Like if I wanted to change the cost, or if I wanted to go in here and add authentication, this is where I would do that. I'm going to click on add, and I've got added one interface. Set the area type. We're not going to mess with that right now. We're not going to mess with the range type, anything like that. And then we can come down here. If we wanted to propagate a default route, we could by doing this originate command. If we were to switch this to on, then that would allow the vEdge to propagate a default route to the rest of the network. That is an option as well. We'll actually do that on the vEdges over at the branch sites, so you guys can see what that looks like. But we're in good shape here. I'm going to go ahead and click on save. And I've got that now created. I'm going to go ahead and organize this real quick. And dual site VPN1 OSPF template. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to basically copy this. And I'm going to type in, we'll say, single site. Copy that. And click on copy. And then we're going to go on to, let me go to that particular template. There we are. Let me go adjust him real quick. We're going to edit this. And then we're going to do the same thing, because if you look on the configuration, we are still using gig 0/2 as our LAN facing interface. So that doesn't change. What we're going to do, though, is we come down here to, we're going to have to redistribute OMP for sure. But when we come down here to the advanced, we're going to uncheck this box and go to global. We're going to click on. Now, originate, again, means propagate a default route. And always is going to propagate a default route whether or not a default route exists on the device. So, for example, if your static route to the internet, if you configured a static route to the internet, and all of a sudden that route goes away for whatever reason, the vEdge will continue to propagate a default route even if one doesn't exist. So traffic will still get sent to it as a gateway of last resort, and if it doesn't know what to do with it, it'll drop the traffic then. But there will be other situations where you could actually send the traffic via the SD-WAN fabric back to the HQ, and that's where this will come into play. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to there will always be a default route because we'll propagate it at some point in the future. I'm just going to get this set up ahead of time, but we're not going to do the always. I'm going to keep that out of the mix for right now. But if you want to propagate a default route all the time, that's where the always command will come into play. I'm going to go ahead and click on update. And now that's good to go. The next one I'm going to do is organize them again. I'm going to grab the dual site VPN. We're going to come in here, copy, and then we'll just come in here and say MPLS only. MPLS only. Copy and paste it in. Click on copy. And on this guy right here, we're going to edit. And we will propagate a default route, just checking to make sure everything still looks the same and is the way we need it to be, which is what we want to do. So we're going to say update, and we're good to go. So now that I've got the feature templates created, I'm going to go to the device template, and we'll start off with dual site. So I'll go ahead and click on this guy right here. We'll go ahead and edit it. And then under VPN 1, right here, we're going to go ahead and add an OSPF template. I'm going to click the drop down, and we're going to use dual site. And then I'm going to click on update. So I was going to go ahead and push OSPF down to the vEdge. So we'll give that a couple seconds to propagate, or to, should say, to populate the information. We're going to go here to edit device template. And then we have to come in here and say, what protocol do you want to redistribute? And we're going to choose OMP. Which is that optional capability there. If we wouldn't have selected optional, we would have had to define the protocol right there, but it would have been a global statement. So there probably will be times when you don't want to do that, but right now, in order for any routes or that come in via the SD-WAN fabric that you want to propagate, you're going to need to propagate to the router sitting behind the vEdges. You're going to have to take routes from OMP and redistribute them into OSPF. So we're going to click on update and then click on next. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the config diff real quick. Give that a couple seconds to load up. There she goes. And then we're going to come down here to VPN 1, and you can see that we're doing VPN 1 router OSPF redistribute OMP, and somehow the interface got missed. Let me go back. Did I miss the interface? I think I did, because I didn't add it. That's a big deal, because then it won't actually work. We have to go back. Let me fix that real quick. So templates, feature templates. Let me go fix that, because that's kind of a big deal. OSPF won't work if we don't get that working. So OSPF template. Go here, edit. Somehow I missed that. New area. Area 0. I didn't click on add, that's the problem. Add interface again. GE 0/2 and add, and then add again. My fault. Let me go update the other ones as well. Let's do MPLS only, since they're right here. Go do them in order. edit, or area, new area, area 0, and then add the interface GE0/2 there, add, and update. And last but certainly not least, the single site, OSPF. Area, new area, area 0, add interface again, GE0/2, add, update. Cool. Now we can go through and do our push again. We'll have to go through and edit this because it doesn't save it. Because we come down here to Service VPN, OSPF is gone. So we're going to have to add OSPF again, choose the dual site, click update, and I'll pause until this is done. Alright, that looks better. We're going to add redistribute OMP, and we're going to take area 0. We're going to add G0/2 to it. So we're good to go there. Configure devices. And we're going to sync this up, and we're going to wait. It's going to be a hurry up and wait kind of game. So I'll pause until this is done. Alright, so the push was good there. So we're going to go ahead and pull up the CLI again real quick and switch 16. It doesn't show any updates because show run, and I think that was gig0/1 if I'm not mistaken. And it was. We'll get gig0/1. We're going to go ahead and rip off the authentication at the moment. We'll pull that off real quick. And there we go. Alright, so we have our OSPF adjacency. If we look on vEdge 2 now, and we look at the, let's log in real quick. Do a show IP route. We should see the default route coming in via OSPF for, let's look at VPN1 specifically so we're not confused. And we can see everything coming in that that needs to be advertised, which is awesome. So we're in good shape, right? Everything's looking pretty good. If we go back to vEdge, or to switch 16 now, and we look at the show IP route here, we're going to see a bunch of OSPF external routes. So we'll see all of the 10.3, 10.4, 10.5, and the loopback addresses of the remote sites. So OSPF is working exactly the way that it needs to. vEdge is propagating the information that it needs to, and we're in really, really good shape. So I'm going to go ahead and just walk you through the rest of the other two templates for the device templates. So I'll update the MPLS and the single site, and then once they're updated, I'll do the push. We'll verify that the configs are going to be right, and then we'll go through and get that propagated. So we'll get that all squared away. So we'll have OSPF working at all the sites that we need to, just because of the fact that it makes it easier to use that for route propagation. And then we'll go get rid of the default routes where we need to. So let's go ahead and knock that out real quick. So let's go back to our templates. Since we already have all the feature templates created, now it's just a matter of updating the other devices. So we're going to click on Edit Device Template for the single site device. Come down to Service VPN. We're going to go ahead and add OSPF. Underneath here, we're going to say single site and click on Update. And because we're going to be using gig0/2 at both sites. So gig0/2 here and gig0/2 there. So we'll be in really good shape to move forward there. So we're going to go ahead and click on Edit Device Template. And for here, we're just going to select, it's going to redistribute OMP. Click Update. And if we wanted to, we can simply drag this across to where this is sitting, which I believe is right here. We click on here, go to OMP, you can do it both ways. Click Next, and then we're going to grab the vEdge, or one of the vEdges, and wait for it to propagate the config diff real quick. Same thing as with the dual site. We can see here we're going to do a default information originate, so we can propagate the default route down to the edge device, so the internal routers. And then we're going to redistribute OMP and advertise or enable OSPF for area 0 for GE0/2. Configure devices, push the config to both boxes, click on OK, and then it's a hurry up and wait type of situation. Alright, so now that push has been made, let's go check vEdge 3 real quick. We're going to do a show IP route VPN1. And so right now we're not learning, we are learning some stuff internally because this guy was running OSPF already. So let's just do a quick show IP OSPF neighbor. We have it up and running. We do a show run section OSPF. And give it a couple seconds to propagate. So we're advertising basically anything 10.3, and if we show run interface loopback 0, that's what I thought. We're doing OSPF underneath the area for the loopback, which is fine. So we're in good shape there. So now if I look at the show IP route, I should have a default route so I have a static route still. So let's do a show run pipe include IP route. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of that static route. Give it a couple seconds to respond. We're going to go ahead and rip that out. Like so. And so do show IP route. We should have a, after it might take it a couple seconds for it to generate one. Oh, you know what? I bet you the vEdge doesn't have one. So, yeah, it doesn't have one currently. Because we look at what's being redistributed via OMP. And the reason why we don't have one is on the hub side, number one, we don't have a static route configured for VPN1 traffic to go out to the internet, right? Because remember, it's a VRF. So if we wanted VPN traffic to go out locally to do what they call local internet breakout, we'd have to configure that locally. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can solve this. You could configure NAT on the vEdge locally to provide that local internet breakout, or you could go through and advertise advertise OSPF to OMP so that the OSPF routes at the HQ site are propagated over the wire or via OMP to the branch sites, and there we would learn a default route. So we'll take a look at that in another video, but right now, let's keep let me go on 13. Let me just go ahead and have that in there anyway. Let me put that back in. Let me double check. So do show IP route. Just make sure. Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and throw that route back in. So we'll come back to that at a later point in time when we actually want to take a look at NAT and failover for NAT. So we're good to go there. So let me go do the MPLS only site because router 15 should be the same way. Show IP route, and I need a config T router OSPF1 network of 10.4.0.0 area 0, and then interface loopback 0 IP OSPF1 area 0. There's our adjacency do show IP route. We're learning after some couple of moments we should learn some OSPF routes, which we are. So good. We have OSPF learned for all of our basically anything RFC 1918 we're learning via OMP, right? So think of it like MPLS VPN, where you're not going to send traffic via the WAN unless you need to send it to another branch or an HQ or other site that you need to have reachability towards. We'll finish out OSPF by taking a look at some of those capabilities, and then when we switch gears into BGP and get that squared away, we'll take a look at BGP at the HQ site. I'm going to circle back and do NAT later, where I'll be able to take the OMP routes, and then we'll be able to propagate we'll take the OSPF routes we've learned and be able to propagate them via OMP down to the branches or the remote vEdges. So they'll learn a default route via OMP, and then we'll take those routes and we'll use that to do our internet failover. So that'll be in an upcoming video. But right now we're focusing on the operations internally because that still is a really big deal for most environments. You still have to get connectivity internally and all that type of stuff. So for right now we're in good shape. Let me go ahead and do the MPLS only site, and we'll get that knocked out real quick considering it's I don't have that one configured yet. I want to be on the same page with everybody. So that'll be a quick one to fix. Templates, device templates, MPLS only, edit, and then service VPN, we're going to OSPF, we're going to add for MPLS only, click update, and then get that pushed. So we're going to go ahead and scoot this over to OMP, which is what we want there. Next, and then I'm going to go just configure devices because I don't need to check the config, and I'll wait for that to do its thing. Okay, so it looks like the push was good, so we're going to check on the router 14. Yeah, iOS 14. There's our adjacency, which is awesome. Show IP route. We'll learn a bunch of stuff via OSPF, which is awesome. So that's actually the preferred way to do things, right? So we have OSPF up and running on all of our sites and all that type of stuff. So what we're going to do, take a look at in the upcoming videos, I'll take a look at setting up, changing the network type. So we're going to go from broadcast to point on our internal LAN connections here at the HQ site. So again, we're going to start to be a little bit more specific. We'll get that done, and then we'll do the authentication. We'll get authentication knocked out, and that'll pretty much be that. We won't really have to take a look too much more of that. Once we get the network type changed and we get the authentication configured, then we'll transition into BGP. We'll get some iBGP peerings internally set up so we can test BGP and get that squared away. We'll take a look at a localized control policy for BGP, where we'll actually push a control policy down to VH2. We'll configure one on VH1, and what we'll do is we'll basically tell switch 16 to always prefer VH1, or we could say VH2, it doesn't really matter, to prefer it from a routing perspective, so it'll always forward towards a particular V-edge as an egress point. And then once we get done with that, then we'll transition over to the hub site, or the branches, and we'll focus there in terms of getting NAT up and running and how NAT works, and then we'll take a look at getting that all squared away. So until next time, guys, thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with me, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.